Greetings, Reset with Raven family. I'm Raven M. Harris, and today I'm looking forward to a semi sweet conversation. And you'll understand very soon why only semi sweet. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Melissa Ross. Melissa is a certified holistic health coach and life coach, helping business busy women break free from sugar and stress and emotional eating so they can be calm, confident, and at peace around food, around sugar, in stressful situations, in their bodies, and in their life. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. It's going to be a great semi-sweet conversation.
And I'm super excited to talk with you. All right, let's talk about what initiated your health reset.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it wasn't something that I sought out at all. For me, it was about 10 years ago, and we had a newborn baby who was not sleeping. So I was an exhausted mama. And we also had a 2-year-old daughter who had some undiagnosed food allergies and sensory challenges at the time. My husband was traveling for work, and I had just gotten a PTSD diagnosis from childhood trauma. So picture, if you will, this overwhelmed, frazzled mom with all of these moving pieces who was basically living off of sugar to kind of survive, to get through the day, to really kind of stuff the feelings that I was having that I didn't know how to handle. And it wasn't until I got that diagnosis, Raven, and I went to a naturopath, and she took a lot of my vitamin and my mineral levels and discovered that a lot of things were not in a good place because of what I had eaten. So through that journey, I learned to change my relationship with food, my relationship with myself, my relationship with my body, and really found freedom from using food to kind of stuff my feelings and using sugar to kind of escape from those feelings. And so because of that, I went to school to help other women who are where I was. So that's the long and short of it.
Wow, wow. So much to unpack there.
Mhm.
One of the things that we can start with is I remember offline you said changing your nutrition changed everything. Why is that?
It was so interesting because I just grew up with the mindset that we eat when we're hungry and it doesn't matter what we eat, just as long as we eat. And so I grew up eating a lot of Doritos, a lot of, Velveeta and white bread sandwiches, a lot of Coke, a lot of candy. And I oftentimes felt like crud and I didn't realize it. And it wasn't until I changed my nutrition that I realized how good I could feel. Like I had more energy. My mindset was better. I didn't have the foggy brain. My sleep was better. I was able to better navigate and handle stressful situations because I had some resilience there. So, really changing my nutrition really changed so many parts of my life. And it has such a huge impact that I wasn't aware of.
Wow. And one of the things you talked about was stress eating. So, a lot of people have, it used to be called like the freshman 20. Now I've adopted a new term, the COVID 20. What do you do to stop or suppress the stress eating? What tactics or strategies do you do? Because this past year and going into 2021, it's like 2021 came back with a mask and a clown suit. It's like, ha
Yes.
ha. What do you do to manage that stress eating?
I think there's so many different aspects to it. I think the first step is to really become aware of your relationship with food. Because for me, Raven, it wasn't until just a few years ago that I was like, oh, I was a stress eater. I was using stress to kind of, handle the feelings, the overwhelm, to kind of push things down. I had no idea I was doing that. And I think the first step is to slow down and really kind of become aware of your relationship with food. Are you eating out of boredom? Are you eating out of stress? Are you eating out of frustration? Are you eating out of hunger and really nourishing your body? So I think that's the first thing. I think the next thing is to really get curious and replace judgment with curiosity, because I think once we're aware of something, we can be really hard on ourselves and say, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that, or I'm so whatever. But if we can just get curious and ask why, why am I going to the pantry when my kids go down for a nap? Why am I feeling like I need a treat after I've gone to the grocery store and the checkout lane. Why do I feel like I need these foods then? I think that's another thing. And I think the last thing is to really kind of get to the root of the issue, right? Like I think there are so many programs and plans that they want the quick fix and they want to see that immediate result. But if you don't get to the root of it, it's not going to have lasting change. It's like a weed. You've got to pull it out by the root so it won't grow back. I think a lot of plans and programs just kind of want to mow the top of the weed off, but then it's still going to grow back. So really get to the why behind the why of why we do what we do. And for me, I learned it in childhood. My mom modeled it for me. That was what I knew. I started, hiding Pop-Tarts and candies in my room as an 8-year-old girl. And that was just what I knew. So I had to learn a new way of being.
So have you always had like really enjoyed sugar? Mm.
Yeah,
And I
I'm way
know
more
as
sugar than salt.
oh wow. I know as a coach, sugar is like something that you are super focused on, or it's like a crux. Why sugar? Why do you think that sugar is such a culprit?
Because of my personal journey is a big part of that, but I think too it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine. It's
Really?
lethal. Absolutely. Because what it does is it releases those dopamine reward centers in our brain. And so once we get that high, we need to have more of it to experience that same feeling. So that's kind of how the addiction starts. I think it's legal. I think it's readily accessible. It's thrown out for free at parades. It's given out at schools, churches. I mean, you don't have to look very hard to find sugar. And I think it's just accessible and people understand the impact of it maybe on weight, but not perhaps on overall
Oh wow. That just blew my mind. I'd never have heard of that or knew that.
health.
Oh my, and you're right, it is so accessible. And you know another thing that I was listening actually to another podcast and they were talking about understanding our relationships with food and how especially as young children, often we're rewarded with food. And I remember I've been overweight throughout my childhood. And I remember one of the things I would look forward to is like, oh, if you did well scholastically or academically, you would get rewarded with a treat, right? You'd get an ice cream or you get candy or you get pizza. And in hindsight, knowing that that was detrimental to my health, maybe occasionally, but
Mhm.
not to associate success or achievement or accomplishment with with getting food. And I was like, that is very interesting. It's something that I was unconscious of, but it's definitely something that I experienced growing up. And I was like, very interesting. Creates unhealthy relationships with food. And then another thing you talked about was boredom, how boredom is something that is sometimes common that we see where people will eat. And I want to know again, kind of revisiting this. So, how do you conquer those cravings? I understand you have to understand yourself, but what do you do if you're like, I have a craving right now? What's the alternative or what's the approach right now?
Yeah, I love that question because I will oftentimes tell people I work with Raven that a craving is oftentimes a messenger of something wanting to come out. So, what is it that we are withholding? What is it that we're suppressing? What is it we're shrinking? What is it that we are not letting out that's crying out? Because really, that's kind of what a craving is. It's an area of our life that needs attention. And so, for me, back to my story, I was needing some space. I needed, 5 or 10 minutes of silence. And I didn't have that in my life because of the way the schedule was. And I had some habits that, I wasn't giving myself that built in time. But I think a lot of times, if we can look at the craving as a messenger and ask, what is it trying to say? That's really kind of how we deal with it because we are going to have cravings. I think our bodies crave certain things, and that can be a sign of a nutritional deficiency. Absolutely. But I think a lot of times there's something deeper going on as well.
Hmm. A craving is a messenger.
Mhm.
Hmm. I'm gonna have to sit with that. That's good. I've never thought about it to that level. Of course, I'm craving like, oh, I'm craving chips and craving cookies, but what is that um, deeper deeper meaning behind it. And I
I have a
want to talk about,
story if it would help. Because
mm,
it does seem
story.
kind of, out there. Um, I had a client that I worked with and she craved cheese and crackers. She hated cheese and crackers. So we're like, what's going on here? What's behind that? And for her, she was able to think back to her childhood where she would have really happy memories of, family friends being together, having a lot of fun, a lot of peace, a lot of joy. And guess what they would eat? Cheese and crackers. So when she wasn't feeling those feelings in her day-to-day life, her go-to find that was cheese and crackers. So I don't know if that kind of helps put it into context because it's kind of an abstract thought, but once, there's maybe an application, it's a little bit easier to put into daily life.
No, that's good. And staying on that same vein of cravings, let's talk about dieting. There's a lot of pressure to find, I want to use like air quotes, like the right diet, and a lot
Yes.
of frustration around trying out different diets. I was in a clubhouse room the other day, and when they were talking about commitment and what are the things that throw you off your commitment. And a common theme, especially among women, that kept coming up was, I tried a diet, or I tried a new fitness plan and I didn't see immediate results. Or I didn't see, all of the work that I was putting in, or I felt like I was starving myself or withholding something from myself. So, what would you say to someone trying to find the right diet?
There is no right diet out there. The right diet is the one that works best for you and your unique body type. And we're all individual, we're all unique, but we've been marketed this, misconception from the diet industry that this works for your neighbor, this worked for your boyfriend, this is going to work for you. And that's not the case. We're all different, we're all unique. Like my kids, yes, we have the same DNA, but they're different than me. So we really need to learn to honor our uniqueness and the way that our bodies are made. And the best diet is the one that works for you and only you.
Mm. So, doing what works for you. I think that that is probably like the theme of the day or theme of the year. And as I think about resetting, it's in honoring your values and honoring your body. And it's like, okay, what is in alignment for me? And I think that comes with diet and any just practices that we take upon. It's like, what do I find that's the most effective and for me? I wanted to go back, recircle it back around again. You talked about being a mother and your husband traveling and just kind of things getting a little bit out of whack or out of sorts for you. Tell us more about that and like what you learned from that experience, from nutritionally, mindset wise. What changes and adjustments did you have to make when? Because I think so many of our listeners, they're working professionals, they're mothers, and we're trying to have it all, right? And sometimes things get out of alignment, and of course we can see that showing up and manifesting in our health and our eating habits. So tell us more about what was going on for you and how you were able to resolve that and work through that.
I think the biggest thing, Raven, was knowing that I was worth taking care of because I think there's this mentality that once we get married and have a family, our needs don't matter. We just put ourselves on the back burner to care for everybody else. And I'm not saying that you like go off and do your own thing and leave your kids in the dust, but I think there's a balance because if you, as the mother who's setting the tone for the home, you're modeling so much for your children. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to teach your kids how to take care of themselves. And so for me, I think my biggest piece from that was learning that I mattered, that I had value, and that I was worth taking care of. And there was nothing to feel guilty about. Because when I left that naturopath office, I left with hundreds of dollars of supplements. And I just remember feeling so guilty and so bad. And oh my gosh, what an expense, what a burden. But if I had, maybe shifted and realized, what, my health is an investment. It's an investment in myself. It's an investment in my family. It's a legacy that I'm leaving. I wouldn't have had that guilt. So I think it was really learning about, a journey of worth and health and what my priorities are and how to take care of myself and my family.
Yeah, we hear often, and it's becoming even more relevant and stated lately. Self care is not selfish, and you hear that analogy all the time of, or the metaphor all the time of, when you get on a plane, put that your own oxygen mask on, or you can't be helpful to those around you. Or and they always tell that to, especially for people who are traveling with someone under the age of 12, like, you can't help anyone else if you are not making sure that you are good. The next question I had is, so you go to a naturopath, you leave with sounds like a bag of supplements, an investment. Now what? Because I think, and for someone who's had my own digestive and gut issues, what was the next step for you after that? You leave the naturopath, you have your supplements. Like, what time frame did it take? Did you also have to have a GI? Did you also have to have some therapy, counseling, your own life coach? What was that journey like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I left with a big old bag of supplements and I started taking them. And I was in that process. The reason I got connected with with the naturopath is because I had been working with a life coach. That's where this whole journey started because I was the overwhelmed mom. And she, ironically enough, was also an LCSW and had PTSD herself. So through starting our coaching journey, she was like, I think there might be something more going on here. So she suggested, could you have PTSD from childhood? I'm like, no, I'm not in the military. That's not a thing if you're not military. I didn't know very much clearly because you can have PTSD and not be military. So I got the diagnosis, went to the naturopath, continued with the therapy, started to notice a difference with the supplementation. What kind of, I think if I could look back and do it differently, and that's probably why I do what I do, is I wish I had known then about the impact of food as well, because that part didn't come until later in my journey, Raven. Like once our daughter was diagnosed with the food allergies, I then got tested because she got them from somewhere. And I took out the foods that we're intolerant to. That made a difference. And then shortly thereafter, I went to a whole foods way of eating. And so, eating more fruits, vegetables, foods in their natural form without the processing, the added sugar. And that combination really set me up for, health and energy and really being the healthy, happy mama that I wanted to be. So it was a very long, drawn out process. I wish it had ended with the supplements. It would have been easier, but it didn't. And that's, there's just a lot of pieces on the journey. And I think we just want the one thing that will make it all end. And that's not, joy in the journey.
That's one of the things that I'm having to lean into, is to be so committed to the process
Mm-hmm.
and to enjoy the journey, like lean into the journey. That is, it's challenging when you want quote unquote overnight results or overnight success. I think another thing that I really want to highlight that you said is that you had your own life coach. I believe that every excellent coach has a coach. I was watching a video a few days ago, and it was Bill Gates was saying that he has a coach in different areas. And I think that's super important because um, when you're working with a coach, having a specific specialty, such as like food cravings and sugar and pressure eating or stress eating, that's super important to be able to nail in and zone in on that particular area. The question I have is about intolerances and food triggers. So, again, anyone listening, if someone is listening and wondering, well, how do I know if I have food intolerances, or how do I know if what I'm eating is playing a role? What are some of the common symptoms that you might experience? You alluded to them earlier when you were talking about brain fog, but what are some of the other, and expand upon that for someone's like, what is brain fog? I'm forgetting, or, expound upon that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say brain fog, I mean like can't really think clearly. Like everything just feels like a jumbled mess. Like your mind is not clear. So that was one of my symptoms. Mood swings is another one. Digestive issues is another. For me, I would get like for my children as well, like our we would become angry. And I know it probably sounds crazy because you don't think that foods can make you angry, but they actually do. Especially the dyes, those are a big one that affect behavior for sure. But digestive system issues, mood swings, brain fog, low energy, unable to lose weight. Actually, if you're intolerant to foods, your body will hold on to weight. You can have joint pain because your body's inflamed. There's several different ways that it shows up. And for me, it was just exhausted, crabby mom.
Oh, that's good. And when you talked about holding on to weight, it made me think about sometimes it may not be that you're not working out intensely and watching your diet or managing your diet. Maybe look at there's certain foods that may you just have an intolerance to that create that inflammation or that gut distress that may make you hold on to weight. So that's something really good. If you're like, hey, I keep for some reason I'm continuing to hit a plateau. That's really good. Another question or thought that really came to my mind is you have the name of your company is Free to Be. What does that mean?
For me, Raven, it means you're free to be your authentic self because I think a lot of times as women, we wear so many hats. For me, I'm a recovering people pleaser. And when I broke free from the sugar and the emotional eating, there were all of these other things I found freedom from because it was anxiety. It was, being the angry mom. It was being stressed out, being overwhelmed. Like there were all of these different pieces that were all part of the puzzle, but I didn't know. And so I think, we were talking about the journey earlier. Once you go through that journey, you can look back and you're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that that's where I was, or that's how I was showing up, or that's what that looked like. So when are down the road and you look back, it's really incredibly powerful. And so that's why it's free to be coaching is because I want women to be free to be who they're made to be. I don't want them to shrink down and try to fit into the diet mold or who society says they have to be, but just freedom to be your authentic self.
I love that. That is so important. And I bet it's like a release, right? It's like a new peace, a new comfort you find in being you and not having to put on a different facade depending on who you're around or as you said, people pleasing. That's we could get into a whole nother conversation, a whole nother segment about people pleasing and the stress that that brings to our mentality and probably how that affects us physically as well. So that is so good. So anyone that is looking to work with you or find more information, before I ask that last question, where can they find you online?
Absolutely. My happy home is free, the number two, the letter B, coaching.com. So free to be coaching.com.
Great. And what is the greatest lesson you've learned in your reset?
I think that I am stronger than I gave myself credit for. I think when we're in this really hard, difficult place, we oftentimes can't see, we feel like we're in the bottom of a pit and we maybe can't see out. And I had no idea how strong I was. I had no idea how resilient I was. And I feel like my reset just gave me more strength and more resilience. And so when hard things come, I feel like I'm better equipped to handle them. So it's been, exciting. It's been hard. I'm not gonna lie, but it's great to, look back and be like, wow, that's powerful. That's exciting. You can do it.
I love that. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Well, thank
Wonderful.
you for having me. It was awesome to connect.
Awesome. Slow down to become aware. Replace judgment with curiosity. If you want to change, get to the root. A craving is a messenger. Melissa's message wasn't semi sweet, it was perfectly sweet. Do you need your own reset? Ready to recharge your life? Need clarity on those next steps and what they look like, what they feel like? Well, I have a special treat for you. Check the link in the show notes for details on how to register for my free training called Clarity in Action. I guarantee it will be a sweet treat. And remember, a reset is always available to you.